I'm Victor Blackwell. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. We're starting with that breaking news out of Egypt. A Russian passenger jet carrying 224 people has crashed in Sinai. The Metrojet flight 9268 took off from the resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh just after 6 a.m. local time. Rather just before 6 a.m. It was headed to St Petersburg, Russia, when it lost contact with air traffic control. That was 23 minutes into that flight.
Now, Russian officials say they're sending 5 planes as part of a rescue mission to the site of where the crash is, and dozens of Egyptian ambulances have been rushed to the crash site. Any effort to reach the site, though, it could be difficult because of what the region is like. There's rough mountain terrain there.
We've got coverage from around the world this morning. International diplomatic editor Nick Robertson is live in Moscow. Aviation correspondent Richard Quest is in our London bureau. We're starting with Ian Lee in Cairo. Ian, we understand that the Prime Minister there has been meeting with ministers and security officials. What are you hearing this morning?
Well, now hearing that the Prime Minister is going to be heading out to the Sinai Peninsula, to the scene of the crash. We're also hearing from state media is reporting that this is likely a technical failure. They are saying in state media they're ruling out any sort of foul play. Now, this plane took off early in the morning.
People crashed in a mountainous area in the Sinai region there in Egypt. The Russian embassy says that bodies are being recovered, but no reports of survivors.
All right, let's get you caught up on what we know so far. Metrojet flight 9268, it took off just before 6 a.m. local time, and it was headed from the popular resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt to St Petersburg in Russia, but it lost contact 23 minutes into the flight.
Russian officials say they are sending 5 rescue planes, those planes scheduled to take off about an hour from now. We've got coverage from around the world on this morning. Ian Lee, live in Cairo. We're beginning with aviation correspondent Richard Quest in London. And the latest report coming from Reuters that there reports Egyptian authorities say that the black box has been found, and this is still within hours of this crash.
Well, it's entirely possible that the black box has been found, but I have to say, I'm treating a lot of this stuff that we're hearing from the scene with an enormous amount of caution. This accident only happened a few hours ago, less than 3 or 4 hours ago. We're talking about a smouldering wreck still on the ground, let alone time to be sifting through wreckage, finding black boxes. This plane came out of the sky from 33,000 feet at a very severe rate of descent. So the debris field, although it might be compact, it's going to be deep, and it's going to be there's going to be lots of pieces. The black boxes, as you know, are red or orange, bright orange, so they will be relatively easy to see, and I certainly don't expect there to be I expect them to be perfectly readable and usable. We've seen far worse situations than this. But I would put a very strong red flag out against many of the reports that we are hearing, particularly about recovery of bodies, question of survivors, and locating the black boxes. The experts, if you like, the aviation experts haven't even got there yet.
What about reports, Richard, that the pilot radioed to request a landing at a nearby airport before the aircraft was just disappeared off the radar?
Yes, we've heard this one. Apparently, he said here there were some technical difficulties. But again, I'm going to put that with a red flag. Pilots don't usually just say we're having some technical difficulties, we need to land in emergency. They'd usually be a little bit more precise than that and tell the air traffic controller exactly, what it is they need and what has gone wrong. Maybe not, but it depends on how overwhelmed they were in what they were doing. Every accident I've ever covered has always had this sort of pilot said this, and when you finally get to what they actually said, it's usually something completely different. So certainly we don't know if there was any mayday. We don't know what, if anything, those technical difficulties were. But we do know from independent verification from Flight Radar 24, which has the data of the flight profile, that this flight, I think according to looking at the numbers, this plane gets to about 33,000 feet before it then comes out of the sky. And the rate of descent is quite dramatic, going up to as much as 6,000 feet per minute.
Okay, you've made it clear early. It is early in the investigation right now, taking a lot of these reports with a lot of caution. Richard, thanks very much. Let's go on to Ian Lee. He's live in Cairo for us. Ian, what do you have?
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Richard said, a lot of caution. We have been sifting through a lot of different rumors that have been coming out here in local media and from other sources. And what the picture from what we're hearing from government officials here is that about 20 minutes into this flight, when the plane was a little over 150 miles north of Sharm el-Sheikh, the departure where the plane departed, that is when the plane encountered some difficulties. And what that is, we do not know. We are hoping to learn more once they do recover those black boxes. We do know Egyptian emergency personnel are on the site of the crash. This is in the north central part of the Sinai Peninsula in an area near a town called Hassana. This is a mountainous terrain, so that could provide be difficult for emergency crews trying to recover bodies as well as the wreckage. We heard, though, that this plane, the wreckage, was initially spotted by Egyptian fighter jets, and then they reported it to the Egyptian authorities, where then they sent out about 50 ambulances, so a lot of ambulances there heading to that scene. But that's really, as far as we have it, all that the Egyptian government has been saying. Now, there have been other rumors of voices being heard at the scene of the wreckage. You know, that we just cannot confirm. So we need to dispel that right away. There's also have been reports that people saw the plane coming down. We just don't know any of that information right now. But these are some of the rumors that if people are looking online, these are some of the things that they might be seeing. So right now we're waiting for the news to come out from that black box, from this investigation, exactly what happened.
Ian, thank you so much. And you can only imagine that there are families that are waiting for some clarity here after the reports that this plane crashed. And we are getting some of the images of many of these families that are getting this news. And it's important that, as Ian stressed and Richard stressed as well, that the reports that we're getting, even from many of the news organizations, from state media,
that just may not be
we
true.
get some clarity.
Yes.
This soon after a crash, we have to be careful.
Heartbreaking pictures here. You know, a lot of these families go from Russia quite often to Sharm el-Sheikh. This is a resort area in Sinai. Everybody goes to, to dive and to enjoy the beautiful coast there. A lot of families often go on these flights to enjoy a holiday. Heartbreaking to see these pictures here. All right, let's go ahead and move on to CNN aviation analyst Les Abend. I know you've been listening to our reports so far. What are you thinking? We're hearing that the weather was clear at the time that this plane may have gone down.
Yeah, good morning, Allison. I'm getting reports just as you have. I've listened to, I echo Richard Quest. It's very early to speculate. We're only 8 hours, a little over 8 hours into this accident, and that's not a lot of time. And what you said about the weather is absolutely true. I was looking at the international weather site that I utilize when I go flying. There only was one system, and it looks like it moved far off to the east. I don't even think they were affected by it. And even if there was a weather area, this is a situation that we encounter all the time. So what disturbs me is, the airplane was up at cruise altitude. We don't have a lot of accidents up at cruise altitude, at least, in the past, we have reported on some of them. But let me just say what we do know. This is an A321. It's part of the A320 family. It's a reliable aircraft. It's the stretch version. It carried a lot of people, according to the Russian reports, if they're correct, 224, which include crew members on board. That says to me that it's almost strictly a coach airplane. That's a lot of seats in that airplane. In any case, it's a highly computerized airplane. But once again, let me say that it's a very reliable airplane. In that area of the world, a lot of radar. So there should be targets out there that would have at least looked at the trajectory of the airplane, would have seen possibly altitudes that this airplane went to. If it was having what we're calling right now technical difficulties, I agree with Richard. We would have been a little bit more specific on reporting what exactly we had. However, they may not have known what they had. They may have had information on their screens that indicated some sort of problem that they were troubleshooting through a checklist. And at this point, it's hard to say, but like I said, it disturbs me that something happened at cruise altitude. There's plenty of time to divert and get the airplane on the ground. Something may very rapidly have occurred on board that airplane that went from bad to worse very quickly.
Explain a little bit more about cruise altitude and why it surprises you that something may have gone wrong at that altitude.
Well, cruise altitude is a very stable portion of the flight. The autopilot is on the air. It's a very the altitude, the atmosphere is very sensitive up there. So any pilot input makes it very well. The airplane is very sensitive to fly. So autopilot is generally on. The pilots are monitoring systems. So it's a very low stress environment in the cockpit. Because takeoff is higher stress and landing is higher stress, but at cruise, it's just a matter of making sure the airplane's working fine. So if a problem occurs in that low stress environment, you've got plenty of time to establish what your problem is, go through the appropriate checklist, whatever has come up as a problem. And then if you realize it's a problem that requires a diversion to an airport, you got plenty of altitude, even if both of those engines quit. I'm not implying that that's what happened, but you've got enough gliding distance to make it to alternate airports. And in that area of the world, there is plenty of alternate airports. So all this thinking would have gone through the crew's head. So at cruise altitude, just, there's just plenty of time. So what I'm saying is something happened that was immediate, and these folks in the cockpit were unable to handle it quickly enough, because, like I said, cruise is a time that you should be able to get to checklists and establish where you're going to go.